Hi, my name is Mark McCaffrey, and I'm the founder of ECOS. First of all, thank you very much for being here today, wherever you are. For ECOS to survive and thrive in the coming years and decades, we really need your involvement. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to give you an overview of how ECOS has developed, where we are now, and with your help and insights, where we can go into the future. The vision of ECOS is simple: a world of empowered communities, governments, and actors networked to rapidly implement equitable and urgently needed climate solutions from the grassroots to the global scale. Our current mission is to serve as a coalition of community builders, a network of networks, enhancing the climate change education, communication, and outreach endeavors of the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat through the ACE program, its member states and subnational entities around the world. But more broadly, we aim to foster collaboration and exchange of transformative information, knowledge, and practices by broadening civic engagement, building capacity, and shaping policy. Starting in 2005, I had the chance to work with education, communication, and outreach experts around the world on climate-related projects through the International Polar Year. And it was an opportunity to collaborate internationally, which I found extremely exciting and enormously rewarding. But we were focused mostly on trying to increase climate literacy and awareness rather than advocate for action at that point. Fast forward to 2015, when my wife and I moved to Europe. At that point, I knew only a little bit about the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was signed by virtually every nation in the world, as I mentioned, in 1992, with the aim that nations would have common but differentiated responsibilities to tackle climate change. What surprised me when I first moved to Europe was that the convention also included the commitment from nations to develop education, training, and awareness programs, and to collaborate together with the aim of involving the public in developing adequate responses to climate change. This part of the convention was known as Article 6. And like the goal of substantially reducing greenhouse gas emissions, little work had actually been done to accomplish that goal, or those goals, really, towards informing and engaging the public and professionals so that they could be part of the solution. June of 2015, I attended a meeting at the headquarters in Bonn, Germany, where these goals of education, training, and public engagement were rebranded as Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE. It was decided that Article 6 of the convention was a little too complicated and not very exciting, so the decision was made to rebrand it, rename it as Action for Climate Empowerment, and oftentimes we just abbreviated it as ACE. In theory, every nation was to have a robust ACE leader and focal point who could help develop a national strategy. But like so many of the other aspirational goals of the UNFCCC treaty, while there were a few success stories, most countries had done little or nothing to follow through on these goals, especially in public engagement. The original Article 6 talked about how the public would be involved with developing adequate responses to climate change, and that simply wasn't being done on any kind of meaningful scale. So why is this? Like so many complex global issues, there's no single reason. But personally, I think that it's all too easy to say, let's involve the public. Of course, they should be part of the solution. But in practice, we've left climate change, like so many other problems, to the experts, the VIPs, the climate scientists, the politicians, the negotiators who jet around the world, going to conferences, coming up with top-down solutions that so far haven't really worked. Emissions continue to rise. But what we really need to do is find a solution that's not just top-down or bottom-up, but more of a middle-out transformation. After attending COP25 in Paris and seeing substantial energy and innovation around education, communication, and outreach, it occurred to me that we needed a dedicated constituency like the one for youth, Youngo, or the one for research and independent organizations, Ringo. So I contacted the Secretariat and suggested that they endorse the idea. Right before COP26 in Marrakesh, the Secretariat gave their approval, but not as a constituency, rather as a community. Nevertheless, as a community, we'd be recognized by the Secretariat. We would have standing in the sense that we could host side events at subsidiary body and the COP conferences. and we would be able to engage directly with the Secretariat. Since then, ECOS has evolved as a volunteer-driven community of people around the world, most of them involved with existing non-governmental organizations, and all of them committed to the goals of Action for Climate Empowerment. Between the individual and everyone on the planet, there are 10 orders of magnitude, meaning from one person, we add zeros to each scale until we reach 10 billion, which is the estimated human population of the planet by 2050. So that offers a very simple framework, 1, 10, 100, 1,000, et cetera, on up to 10 billion. Over the past decades, we've been focused on large-scale, billions and millions of people, top-down efforts driven by countries to solve the climate conundrum. There's also been a focus on what things that individuals and households can do to change their behaviors. But what if many of the solutions are actually addressed more in the middle, more in the range of tens or hundreds of thousands of people, more at the community and neighborhood scale? A few months back, a group of us published a paper in the journal Environmental Research Letters using data from Project Drawdown, where we found that the scales where there was the biggest impact, the largest number of opportunities for transformation to a more regenerative, survivable future, is between 10,000 and 100,000 people. This is the scale of villages, neighborhoods, school districts, utility districts. It's a human scale where the local and the global converge. Some people call it the global scale. It's sort of merging local and global. And many of us feel this is where we can be putting much more focus to inform and engage the public, and also work with professionals to reduce climate risks and increase our resilience, whether to climate challenges, pandemics, social and economic destabilization, or all the above, since they tend to be all merged together and overlapping these days. ECOS is a potential vessel to work at multiple scales, internationally through the UNFCCC, at national and subnational scales with governments and civil society, with learners and activists. But we need to build our own capacity in order to help others build theirs. In this dialogue process, and next month in our more in-depth design charrettes, we will be exploring more where we've been, where we want to go, and what we need to do to get there. In terms of outcomes, I hope that by the end of this process, we will have resolved how to best organize ourselves so that we can help others, since thus far over the past 4 years, we've accomplished a great deal on volunteer power, which is very much appreciated. But for our next phase, we really need to resolve how we can best serve as a network of networks, a coalition of community builders. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share a little more background about myself and ECOS, and I look forward to learning from all your brilliant ideas and inspiring thoughts.
Hi, my name is Dana Espinosa. I'm from Mexico City. I'm part of the ECOS Steering Committee, and I'm going to share with you in a very briefly way the holistic part of Action for Climate Empowerment, known as ACE. I prepared the paper and I'm going to read it right now to all of you. So within the UNFCCC, the Article 6 of the Convention refers to this as educating, training, and public awareness, capacity building on climate change, prioritizing the promotion, development, and implementation of climate change education programs, as well as the access to climate information and institutional strengthening at the national level of the parties, of every party, I mean parties are the countries, in the fields of science and education. In 2015, during the COP21 in Paris, it was determined that all the efforts related to the implementation of Article 6 of the Convention will be referred as Action for Climate Empowerment. As for Article 12 of the Paris Agreement, it reinforces the need for cooperation in the adoption of appropriate measures to improve education, training, public awareness and participation, and public access to information on climate change. International cooperation is also important for the correct Paris Agreement implementation. ACE was also envisaged as part of the NDCs, the National Determined Contributions that every party has to submit. Last year was the year to submit the new NDCs for every country. So these NDCs has to be updated. So it is crucial to include ACE or the 6 components of the Action for Climate Empowerment in the NDCs to ensure that the Paris Agreement be implemented in a holistic manner. Moreover, ACE has a gender and intergenerational approach. So this approach is especially important as it implies that we must find solutions to climate change among present generations, since future generations are highly vulnerable to the impacts of global warming. Also, Action for Climate Empowerment is crucial, as I mentioned before, for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And it's important to mention that ACE should be seen as an umbrella for the correct implementation of that agreement, as it encompasses both adaptation and mitigation from an entirely social and ecocentric perspective. That's so important. That's why ACE is so important. So the negotiation process is very technical, and very specialized, and programs like ACE help non-governmental actors to be part of the decision-making at the domestic, regional, and international levels on climate change. That's why ACE is so, so important. Thank you.
We have a 10-year deadline before the effects of climate change become irreversible, according to IPCC 1.5 special report. And in that light, if we recall the journey towards the realization of climate action and climate justice that began way back in 1995, we can recognize that there's been a lot of push for climate action at the global and at the international spaces at the higher level. So it has been basically the top-down approach. But as we can testify, even despite us coming up with the Paris Agreement and updating our Paris Agreement that was in 2020, revision of our goals in 2020, we can see that the impacts of climate change seem to be getting worse, and we are far from reaching our target of well below 2 degrees Celsius, and even our financing ambitions have been pushed to 2025 from 2020. So we can clearly see that the top-down approach might not be working for climate action, and we could say that there is need to look at the bottoms-up approach. So for the bottoms-up approach, it basically needs localized climate action. And for localized climate action, we need to have communities across the globe, regardless whether it's Africa, Asia, Europe, or America, all communities implementing initiatives that basically look to address issues of climate action, because we need to look at communities as small ecosystems, because the way we've been operating as a global ecosystem. So we need to break it down to localized community and village ecosystems, and within those, our small localized village ecosystem, we need to be setting our targets and ambitions so that it contributes to the bigger picture. It's like pollution. If you pollute in one place, it spreads to the rest of the world. So we use the same concept. We mitigate and adapt to impacts of climate change at our village and household levels. Then it contributes, every village across the world, it contributes to the global climate ambition and global climate action. And for this to happen, we know that the community recognizes and knows the importance of climate action, but we need to support them, and support must come with, of course, in terms of issues of technology. And for this to happen, there is need for education and awareness among the community. So that's where ACE comes in. And for ACE to effectively come in, then there's need to be a body that basically drives education to support the localized initiatives at the grassroots level, at the village level, at the ward level, So for this to happen, ACE needs a body to drive such agenda, and ECOS, education community outreach stakeholders, is the ideal body to drive that agenda because it basically links the community to other key stakeholders such as government, non-governmental organizations, all the academia, all the people necessary to support the community in implementing climate action. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Timothy Damon from Ohio in the United States. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as the case may be. Building on what the others have said, I would like to elaborate with a little more context on how ECOS has engaged around the UNFCCC process and what that means for this global scale of action. What ECOS has is very special, I think, because of the unique position it's in. On the one hand, it has direct access for any stakeholders from across civil society to engage in the deliberations between governments in terms of where they want to take global climate governance. And we focus that specifically on ACE, of course. For example, we had our formal submission that we made last year, which offered parties recommendations for how they can enhance their work on ACE in the coming years. And this is especially an outcome which is expected from COP26 in Glasgow. Hopefully that will be able to happen on schedule this year. And on the other hand, ECOS sits at the global nexus of people working on climate change from many different facets, and in particular is able to draw together those who are working on education, communication, and outreach. And this really is essential for allowing us to enhance our collaboration, to make various exchanges of perspective and experience, and to be able to help scale up each other's work. And I think all of those ingredients are really essential to how we will succeed. And this unique position really comes into play when we want to talk about how to bolster that middle-out approach. Because ECOS has proximity to the global scale and international processes, but it also has autonomy from them. And that is actually one of the unstated benefits of being a community rather than formally a constituency, which is bound into the process and has many specific rules and mandates that it should follow. ECOS isn't bound by those, and so it's really in our hands to make of it what we will and guide it in the best direction, and that can facilitate the work that governments are doing or that any of us are doing at different scales. It's really an incredible flexibility, but at the same time, a little bit more of a challenge in terms of determining what direction we should go in, how should we get there, which brings us, of course, to the purpose of these dialogues and then the subsequent process with the actual design charrettes. Now, as practitioners in this area, we also know the many challenges which are facing this kind of work. There's a lack of priority assigned to it. There's a lack of financial resources to actually roll up our sleeves and be able to do it. There's often a lack of clear metrics or other measurables to sort of guide and quantify this work. It's a huge challenge, but also all of this, figuring all this out is a vital piece of the puzzle if we really want to be able to have the kind of climate action that will preserve a habitable climate for present and future generations, which really is the ultimate objective of the convention since it was laid down in 1992. And even though this is a huge challenge, I'm personally more inspired than ever to be part of tackling it. And that's because of the many relationships that I've been able to build through ECOS and the kind of work that we're exploring together. And that makes it really exciting to be where we are right now. And all the more exciting because we have you with us. And so I hope that, you know, even though this dialogue is the first step in the process, that you really will want to join us on the journey and to not only follow us through the remainder of this process, but really to join us in all of our work and to share your work and for us to be able to collaborate and really provide the kind of action which is necessary but has not been coming from governments or from other stakeholders thus far. It really is crucial for us to be the champions of ACE. And by moving forward together, we can also inspire, or if necessary, drag along the actors that so far haven't been putting enough effort into this area. Because if we can't engage and mobilize the public, everyone around the necessity of climate action, then we simply won't get there. It's a question of the motivation and political will to do it, more so than the technical challenges of how to accomplish it. And ECOS, I hope, will continue to play an ever stronger role in making all of that happen. And through this process, we'll be in a better position to do so. So once again, thank you for joining us, and really looking forward to all of our engagements now and to come in the future. Thank you.